First of all, Happy New Year for all of you guys. This is our brand new class in this year. Okay, now let's talk about this class. In this class, I will teach you how to use Illustrator specifically for UI and UX design. As you know, Adobe Illustrator is one of the most popular software and great software. Okay, before start using Illustrator for UI and UX design, you need a lot of things inside of Illustrator, different tools you have to use, different options are available for UI and UX design inside of Illustrator, and a lot of other cool stuff that make your life easier, that make your work easier than before. So let's get started and talk about these tools that you have to know when you're using Illustrator for UI and UX design. Okay, before answering to this question, let's talk a little bit about the history of these two softwares. I want to start with Adobe Illustrator. Adobe Illustrator was first developed by Adobe from Apple Macintosh on 1986, and also after that, Adobe released a different version of Adobe Illustrator for Windows, and there's a lots of version of Illustrator for that are available for Windows and Mac, and they're coming in 32 bits and also in 64 bits with different versions. Adobe Illustrator is started with first version, and the latest version of Adobe Illustrator is CC 2016. You can find graphic designers without understanding of Adobe Illustrator. Adobe Illustrator is a very powerful graphic software. You can create vector graphic, you can create drawings, and I want to tell you something, that Adobe Illustrator is vector based. That is the thing that make a huge differentiator between Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. Most of the people ask this question, what is the difference between Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator? That is the thing. The first big difference between Photoshop and Illustrator is the vector based. And also, I don't want to go in depth of these differences between Photoshop and Illustrator, but I just want to tell you that you have to notice that Adobe Illustrator is vector based. Everything that you will create on the user interface of Illustrator on your canvas, it's vector based. It's process as a very complex mathematical process. If you zoom in, extremely zoom in to your canvas, you don't lose your quality, and that's the thing. Actually, if you want to see, Adobe Illustrator is a multi-target software, and that makes Adobe Illustrator very popular, very famous among graphic artists and among digital artists. You can use it to create printable contents. We can use to create still graphics, for motion graphic, for After Effects, and it's very cool. I use Illustrator every day for my motion graphic project. I use Illustrator for UI and UX design, and Adobe Illustrator is under the Adobe Creative Cloud family, and you can download the trial version of Illustrator from Adobe website. Okay, that was a brief story and introduction of Adobe Illustrator that I know most of you guys know about it, but understanding a little bit about history of Illustrator and history of a software will make you more confident on that softwares, and it will help new buy people. Okay, now let's talk about Sketch. Okay, Sketch is a vector graphic application for OS X platform, and Sketch was first released on 7th September of 2010 by a Dutch company, Boeim Coding, and on 2012 it won Apple Design Award of based application. It's very popular nowadays among graphic artists, especially UI designers, UI and UX designers. And if you search about UI and UX topics, if you talk about UI and UX design, you might find Sketch name on that topic. I believe me, Sketch is very popular nowadays, and most of the people jump from traditional softwares like Photoshop, like Illustrator, like these other softwares. They prefer to use Sketch for different pros and cons that we'll talk about it in the next lesson. Sketch is only available for Mac. There's no Windows version. You cannot find Windows version, and that is the thing. If you are a Windows, you might not access to Sketch. And for using Sketch, you have to empty your pocket money, and you have to buy very pricey. Okay, we talk about these two softwares. Both of them are vector-based softwares. Both of them are very powerful. So, which one is good for you? Which one is good for UI and UX designers? Okay, let's talk about is Illustrator is good for UI and UX or not at the first. Okay, before jumping to this, notice that you can design UI and UX in almost every graphic software that support creating in vector-based. You can create in rasterized-based softwares also. For example, you can use Photoshop to create web designs and also web mobile application, but it's not a good choice because you have to work on different sizes on when you're designing UI and UX, and on rasterized based softwares you don't have this flexibility. You have some limitation on working on different sizes. And my answer to this question, is Illustrator is for UI and UX, is it good for UI and UX? Yeah, it is good for UI and UX. Why? Because Illustrator is a very powerful vector-based software. It means that you might not lose your quality when you're working in different size. Illustrator support canvas. Illustrator has their own artboards. You can manage your artboards. You can do a lot of things. Whatever you want to do in graphic, you can do it in Illustrator. Illustrator has a lots of tools for creating different types of graphic shapes and other graphic stuff. You can create amazing complex shapes in Illustrator. And also, I want to tell you that Illustrator is not specifically built for UI and UX. Actually, we can call Illustrator a multi-target graphic software. It's not built for just one graphic task. For example, you can create amazing drawing. If you're an traditional illustrator, you can create drawing on Illustrator, on Adobe Illustrator. You can design brochures, you can design almost every printable contents, you can design webs, and these other stuff. It's not just specifically for one graphic task. It's a multi-target, multitasking software that it makes Illustrator very powerful. Now, let's talk about Sketch. Is Sketch good for UI and UX? Yes, it is the best choice for UI and UX. Why it is the best? Because Sketch is completely built for UI and UX design from ground up, from scratch. The creators of Sketch build Sketch from ground up for UI and UX. You can create almost every design of UI and UX for mobile application and web design. You can also use Sketch to create printable contents, but as compared to Illustrator for multi-target features, it is not a good choice if you want a software that do a lot of other things instead of one specific field. Okay, it's clear that every software has their own pros and cons. Let's talk about pros and cons of Illustrator at the first. What is the pros and cons of Illustrator? The first thing is having plenty of tools for graphic. As we mentioned, you can create almost everything. There's a lot of tools. If you're working with Illustrator, you know that there's plenty of things that you can access to that. There's plenty of tools that helps you to create amazing arts. The next thing is good support and updates from Adobe. You will get a lot of updates and patches for security issues, for adding new features from Adobe. Every year you will get a new version of Illustrator. Every 3 months and 4 months, I think, you can take an update. You will receive an update. It has a little bit confident about security issues and new features for new innovations and these other stuff. The third pros of Illustrator is huge amount of plugins, scripts and libraries. There is a lot of plugin for Illustrator. There is a lot of scripts and libraries that you can find on internet for Illustrator. What is the benefit of these three things for Illustrator: plugins, script and libraries? These third-party add-ons makes your life easier. You can create new things in Illustrator without doing manually most of the works, without doing complex tasks and these other stuff. By helping of these plugins, scripts and libraries, you can build very artistic and creative arts and designs very easily in a short time, and it is one of the other benefits of Illustrator. The next one is Adobe Illustrator and all of the Adobe software is available for both popular platforms. You can, if you're a Windows user, still you can use Illustrator on your Windows machine. If you're a Mac user, you can also use Illustrator, all of the Adobe package, and it's very good choice for both users, that all of these platforms users have access to this application. And now let's talk about cons of Illustrator. The first one is Illustrator is not specifically built for UI and UX. If you are a UI and UX designer, Illustrator is not built for you, actually specifically for you. You can still design, I've mentioned that you can still design your UI and UX, but it is not specifically built for you. The next one is that Illustrator is not portable compared to the Sketch. It's not a small size. It takes a lot of space on your hard drive and on your computer, and it's not portable compared to the Sketch. And the other cons of Illustrator is that if you are new to Illustrator, you need a lot of time to learn. You need a lot of things to learn in Illustrator. Illustrator is not as simple as Sketch. You need to learn all of the tools. You need to take a large amount of courses, for example 3 and 4 master classes from basic, intermediate, beginner, intermediate, and advanced classes to familiarize yourself with Illustrator. And that is the other cons for UI and UX designers if you are new. Okay, and the last thing about Illustrator is that Illustrator is not cheap. It's very pricey. You have to subscribe to Adobe subscription model. You have to pay a huge amount of money every month or every year. It's depend on your package. It makes Illustrator a little bit limit, and for those people that they don't want to buy a very pricey softwares for their works, or for most of freelancers, it is not a good choice, I think. Okay, now let's talk about a Sketch. What are the pros of a Sketch? Okay, the first pros of a Sketch is that a Sketch is specifically built for UI and UX from ground up. It means that all of the tools that you will see on the user interface of a Sketch is for UI and UX design. You can design mobile application, user interface, you can design web applications, websites, and other user interface and user experience elements in a Sketch. Okay, a Sketch is portable and flexible as compared to Illustrator. It's not, it doesn't take a lot of space on your hard drive. It's very portable and very flexible. Okay, the next thing is Sketch is easy to learn. Believe me or not, if you have a very basic understanding of other graphic softwares like Illustrator, like Photoshop or CorelDRAW, Sketch is like drinking of water for you. Sketch is very easy. Believe me or not, you can familiarize yourself with Sketch in 3 or 4 days if you want. If you have a background of using of other graphic softwares, Sketch is very simple for you. Because user interface of a Sketch is very simple, all of the tools are available in front of you. All the things you need to do is test each one of these tools and work with them. Okay. The next thing, as I mentioned, is the small size of a Sketch. A Sketch is not taking huge amount of your hard drive. It's very small size and portable. The next one is that Sketch is also support a lot of add-ons and third-party plugins. There's a lots of plugins for Sketch that you will find on internet, and these plugins and add-ons will make your life easier. Good support. Sketch has good support and also a good community. If you have a problem, if you want to solve your problem, you can post it on different forums, and there's a lot of Sketch experts that will answer your questions. Okay, the next one is that Sketch is also very good for product design, that you can easily create your product design. If you're an industrial designer or something else, I don't know, but it's good for product design and it's very flexible. The very good point about Sketch is that Sketch is very cheap. It costs just $99, 99 bucks. It's very good for freelancers, for people who are not want to invest a large amount of money on the software. This will be a good choice. Okay, now what are the cons of Sketch? What problems you will face if you were using Sketch? The first one is not having large amount of tool as compared to Illustrator for other graphic work. For example, in Illustrator you can create almost everything that are somehow related to graphic. You can draw, you can have different tools, but as compared to Illustrator, Sketch not have that much of tools for you. Still advanced tools in Sketch, but as compared to Illustrator, it's not too much. Okay, the next cons of Sketch is that it is not available for Windows. If you are a Windows user, you can use Sketch because Sketch is specifically built, it's just available for Mac. If you want to use Sketch, if you are a Windows user, you have to switch to Mac to being able to use Sketch. And the other and the last cons of Sketch is that it is not supporting large amount of formats, large amount of extension. For example, in Illustrator, you can import almost every graphic format, SVG, scalable vector graphics, APS, all these graphic formats you can import and export on Illustrator. But in Sketch, there's not a huge amount of formats that are supported by Sketch. There is still popular one, for example, PNG and other formats, but as compared to Illustrator, is very less. Okay, now that you understand these pros and cons and a little bit about the story of these two softwares, you can decide yourself which one is good for your workflow, which one is good for you can choose it. But in the next lesson, I will talk about which one of these software is good for you, considering other topics. According to that, I will give you an advice which one of these